Hello, this is the RPG Pundit, the final boss in Internet Shitlords. Today, man, I'm just out of it. I'm really, been distracted by a certain trial that's been going on here in the media, and there's been very little news about anything in gaming. And also, on Sunday, we're having a new episode of Inappropriate Characters, so be sure to check that out. And finally, I've been really busy with negotiations. I brought it down to, at the moment, there's 2 potential companies, but it's still not, I haven't signed anything. I mean, you don't usually just sign stuff and this sort of thing, but you make agreements. But anyways, I haven't fixed on, given the digital handshake to any publisher yet. So if you are a publisher and you want to have a last shot at giving me a really convincing speech, then do get in touch, right? It's still possible. So and I've overslept today, and I don't know. But I realize I'm way overdue to do another video. So I'm going to do an advice video today instead of a controversy video, because there's literally no controversy happening at the moment. It's been very, very quiet out there in gaming land. If you know of any, then prove me wrong. Tell me about what's going on in the comments, stuff that I haven't done videos of yet. We could maybe bring it up in Inappropriate Characters. Today I'm going to talk to you about that series of mine of things that they've taught you wrong on purpose about D&D. And one of the big ones is, I've already had videos where I've talked about that D&D isn't about making story, and that story is not the purpose of role-playing games. The purpose of role-playing games is to exist and immerse yourself in a virtual world that is made as real as possible, right? So, the thing I'm going to talk to today is something peripherally related to that, or partially related to that. And it's that when you're making, as a DM, when you're making a game, when you're making a campaign, the story is not what you should be focused on. What you should be focused on is the characters, right? You need to have the world and you need to have the characters, and the characters are absolutely crucial, okay? So, because if you make the characters, then you make a living world. If you make a story, you're more likely to make what I call a Potemkin village. For those of you who don't know the reference, there was this one time when the Empress of Russia was off on a tour of her lands, and she wanted to see the prosperity that her ideas had brought. And actually, everybody there was miserable. They were all just, starving peasants. And so this guy named Potemkin, who was like the governor of this region, he went and he ordered for the village to be covered up with, to make hastily constructed facades, clean everything up, make it all look way prettier than it was, so that when the Empress went by on her carriage, she would see this beautiful village of people thriving and prospering. They gave them shoddily made but beautiful looking clothing to wear and all this stuff, so that she would have the impression that thanks to her, Russia was under great prosperity, when actually it was all just a facade. It was all just a fake act, right? So when you're making story, it does that. It turns the world and the characters into facades of an actual world and facades of an actual human being. It makes them fake, right? A character done in a story will be an ersatz personality. It'll be a character that is, maybe is, in some cases, if it's Charles Dickens running the game or something like that, or Tolstoy, or any of these, some of the really great novelists were to run an RPG, their characters would probably be more multidimensional, but fundamentally a character in a story is meant to be a metaphor for something, or a vehicle for something. They have, the good ones give them personalities that seem really credible, but that it's all part of trying to send a message, right? And therefore, it is not a real world. Real people aren't like that. Real people are complex and contradictory and sometimes stereotypical, but often surprising. And so if your characters feel like real people, not one-dimensional characters. Even the stereotypes, right? Even the quirky ones, even the goofy ones. I'm not saying you can't have those, because those people do appear in real life, right? But if you make it so that they have their own depth to them, and they have their own lives that they are also leading, they're not just there to be a foil for for the player characters, or a foil for the plot, or a device for the plot. Or to act as a metaphor for some kind of deep message you think you're teaching your players. Please do not think you're teaching your players. Unless you're teaching your players history by running a historical campaign, like in Lion and Dragon. If you run a historical campaign about, the 100 Years' War, and you really research it, then at least you're teaching them some history. But that's just, secondary anyway. So the thing is, I have a part of my, I've got a very good reputation as a DM. I always have a waiting list for my games. I run campaigns that last years and years and years, right? So my players keep playing them for years and years and years. And one of the big parts of that is the technique I call the cast of thousands. And this is the idea of having a lot of NPCs and making sure that every NPC, you are, at least in your mind, even if you don't have to go and show it to the players right away, right? It depends on the level of interaction. But in your mind, every one of those characters is a real person, okay? That is rule number one. So they're a person that has a variety of elements to them. And there are people that have their own lives and their own agendas. Sometimes that will coincide with the player character, sometimes that will be opposed by them, but in every case, it'll be for their reasons, not to just be a foil for the player characters, or much less for some kind of a plot that you've come up with. If you have that vastness to the setting, so your players go into a city and talk to some random guy, and it might be the only interaction they have with him, but you immediately make him a real person in your mind, a real person with their own thing, then that's good. And maybe their own thing is just that they really want to convince the player character to buy a plate mail from them, right? That might be it, as far as the players see, right? Unless they choose to keep coming back to the guy or something, and then that might develop into more, because that's the second part of the cast of thousands, is that you want to have characters that come and go from the lives of the player characters, depending on where they're going and what they're doing and what these characters are doing and where they're going. And so whenever you have characters, a group, a party revisit a place or go find a person that they knew before, that person shouldn't be exactly the same as they were before, unless, in very specific circumstances they might be, but for the most part, you assume that the same amount of time has gone by for the person as it has for the player characters, and that person has therefore done things, and those things have changed them in different ways. And so it could be big ways or it could be small ways. But in either case, that person is now a little bit different. And doing stuff like that will create a sense of virtual reality to the setting that will make it suddenly very, very powerful. And the other effect of this is that if you keep this mindset throughout all the characters in your campaign world, you don't need to have any story at all, or hardly any story, right? At the most, you need like plot hooks, right? So what will instead move the game is not some kind of grand storyline you want to write because you're a frustrated author, but rather will be the real life events of a whole bunch of different characters with different agendas doing different things. And of course, if you have NPCs that the players haven't met yet, but are in the setting, you have to treat them that way too, right? Think of what the person is doing, whether it's the king of Goodland or the evil demon Zaz or, whoever it is, right? Now I've got to make a place in my DCC setting called Goodland, damn it. Anyway, the king of Goodland or the demon Zaz or, whatever, the Duke of Orleans, whatever game you're playing, right? Or, Captain Frisbee, whoever it is, they have their thing that they're doing, right? And if you work on that basis, what is this person's goals, right? And as the bigger the character, the more important the NPC, I mean, then the more likely that what they're doing will somehow end up affecting the player characters, even if the player characters don't ever meet this character. And so that will be what moves the plot, right? So if you have and this applies in very serious games, like if you're running the Dark Albion campaign of the War of the Roses, right? The stuff that's going on, the motivations of Queen Margaret or the Mad King or the Duke of York would affect your player characters, whether or not your characters met them, or whether you're playing a gonzo type or a really weird type of campaign, right? So that the region that the players travel through, at one point, it's going to be one thing. You'll have the city, and then you've got this guy, the Dark Lord, whatever, off onto one side. Your player characters might go on a quest and try to kill him, right? Maybe they succeed, maybe they don't. Maybe somebody else comes, and then the next time that they're there, this other person has killed the Dark Lord. Now they're doing stuff, and some of it might be better, but some of it could be a lot worse, right? And the player characters have to deal with that, and it might have changed their favorite city that they travel to, and then there might be some bear wizard like there is right now in my my DCC campaign. Watch it's not my channel. Watch Bill the Elf's channel for my campaign audios, and you'll see what's going on there. That one that woke from a 1,000-year slumber and is now planning to devastate the area that has been deforested from his forest. Which is all these cities and towns that the player characters kind of care about. They care about enough to go stop the bear wizard anyways. He also stole one of the characters' pants, which I decided was an ancient artifact of that the bear wizard, and he demanded it back. So the player characters have got into a conflict with this guy because the bear wizard had a personal agenda that was a product of things that had happened in the world while he was asleep, and the player characters have an interest in him because of their connections to the people and the places that they've gone to in the area that the bear wizard would devastate, right? So suddenly that is that's not a storyline that I've crafted. It's a set of events that are happening that then allow the personal motivations of the player characters and the motivations of the great NPCs of the setting to generate spontaneous adventuring events, right? And the more that happens, the better. And if the player characters see this from the NPCs, they'll be doing the same thing for their own characters as the PCs. They'll be developing themselves, and that's totally different than having someone just make up a backstory that has all of this stuff that they've just invented because they're frustrated off it, right? Don't let your player character start the game with more than a paragraph of backstory at the very most. Let them develop their character into a real-life person by playing it. And just as your NPCs are real-life people by playing them, okay? That way, with the cast of thousands, you end up creating a living world that feels living and changing, and that creates and generates all of its own events. And the bigger your world, the easier it becomes for big events to happen, right? Because you've got all kinds of stuff that's going on all around. But even in a small world, even if you're running a game that's happening like in one valley, of a 64-mile hex region or something like that, right? There's going to be more than enough stuff that could happen there. And of course, you'll have to think a little bit about stuff that happens outside that valley, if anything should end up affecting what's going on in that valley, right? And then the player characters might decide to go somewhere else, and they'll find a whole bunch of new people. And that's how the campaign expands, right? Every campaign starts in one place, The entire world of the Last Sun started with the Rose Dome and the little forest around it, and now it's gigantic, right? After almost 10 years of playing. So this is what you do to make a game that generates immersion, that feels real, and isn't just a Potemkin village. And trust me, you're going to really like it. It might take a little bit of getting used to when what you were used to is trying to make like a novel plot and then follow that. But this is so much more satisfying when you get it right, and you will get it right just by being able to put yourself in the head of the characters as real characters who aren't you and who have their agendas. So just remember that. Anyways, if you like this video, please share it. And subscribe if you haven't subscribed yet, and hit the like button. If you want to support me in my activities, in my vlogging, and in my publishing, and in my pissing off the SJWs, then you can feel free to send me money directly to my Patreon account if you like. But I would personally love it if before you get to that point, you buy all my products, right? Assuming you're a gamer, and most of you who are going to be watching this will be gamers. Check out all my books, like Lion and Dragon, which is now a platinum bestseller. Check out The Invisible College, Arrows of Indra, Cults of Chaos, Star Adventure, World of the Last Sun, featuring the bear wizard. Well, he's not actually in the book because he's shown up now. He might be in some future book, though. You never know. There's a lot of other good stuff in the Last Sun book. And my 106 so far issues of RPG Pundit Presents, which will be bound to have, all of them are PDFs. They're between $1 and $5. And one or more of them are bound to have something that you can use in your game. All kinds of stuff. Monsters, items, adventures, mechanics, classes, more adventures, campaign areas, setting stuff, tons of stuff from all the range of gaming possibilities. Just look it up. All the links are in the description to this video. And yeah, it's like you're buying me coffee or lunch or whatever, and yet you're also getting something for yourself that you will actually be able to use. And remember, only buy gaming products from people who actually like gamers, right? Do not buy gaming products from people who despise you. I guess that's everything for today. Share the video. Thank you very much. We'll see you on Sunday. Inappropriate Characters, Sunday, 7:30 Central. Currently smoking Dunhill Shell Diplomat plus Argento Natural.